Jake Morrison sat at his desk in the communications room of the spaceship UES Horizon. The lights on his control panel blinked slowly as he watched for any messages from Earth or the other human colonies. It was a quiet night shift, just like most others. Jake had been doing this job for 3 years now, and he knew the routine well. The ship was far from Earth, exploring new areas of space that humans had never seen before. Captain Lisa Rodriguez led the crew of 200 people on this mission to find new worlds where humans could live. Jake's job was to keep contact with home and listen for any strange signals from space. At exactly midnight ship time, something changed. Every screen in the communications room suddenly lit up with bright white light. Jake jumped back from his chair as alarms started ringing throughout the ship. The message that appeared on his screens made his heart race with fear and wonder. Weapon of the ancients seeks its chosen bearer. Among all species, one consciousness resonates. Jake Morrison of Terra, you have been selected. The words appeared in English, but as Jake watched, they changed to Spanish, then Chinese, then languages he had never seen before. Some of the symbols looked like they came from another world entirely. Jake's hands shook as he reached for the emergency button to call Captain Rodriguez. "Captain, to communications room now," Jake said into his microphone. His voice cracked with excitement and fear. Captain Rodriguez arrived within minutes, her dark hair messy from sleep. She looked at the screens, and her face went pale. "What? Is this Morrison? Where is this signal coming from?" "I don't know, Captain. It just appeared on every screen at once. Look at this." Jake pointed to his tracking equipment. "The signal is coming from everywhere and nowhere. It's like it's inside our own computers." Dr. Nathan Price, the ship's science officer, ran into the room with Rachel Blake, their communications expert. Both of them stared at the message that continued to repeat every few minutes. "This is impossible," Rachel said, checking her equipment. "The signal is using our own communication system, but there's no outside source. It's like someone is talking directly through our machines." Dr. Price studied the strange languages on the screen. "Some of these symbols don't match any known writing system. Captain, I think we need to assume this message is real and comes from something very advanced." Jake felt a strange feeling in his head, like someone was gently touching his thoughts. "Captain, something is happening to me. Ever since this message appeared, I feel different, like something is trying to connect with my mind." Captain Rodriguez looked worried. "Morrison, I want you to stay away from those screens. Everyone, we need to lock down all communications immediately. Rachel, can you trace where this signal is really coming from?" Rachel worked quickly at her computer. "Captain, you're not going to believe this. The signal is coming from a location that shouldn't exist. It's in an area of space where we see nothing, no stars, no planets, just empty darkness. But the signal is definitely coming from there." The message appeared again, and this time, Jake felt the strange touch in his mind grow stronger. He saw flashes of images that weren't his own memories. A crystal weapon floating in darkness. Ancient beings fighting a war across the stars. Civilizations that existed before Earth's sun was born. "Captain," Jake said slowly, "I think this weapon, whatever it is, it's been waiting for someone, and somehow it chose me." Dr. Price checked his instruments. "The signal is getting stronger with each repeat. Jake, your brain activity is showing unusual patterns. Something is definitely affecting you." Captain Rodriguez made a hard decision. "All right, people. We're going to that location. If this weapon exists and it's calling for Morrison, we need to know what we're dealing with. Rachel, prepare a message to send back to Earth Command. Tell them what's happening here." But when Rachel tried to send the message, she discovered something frightening. "Captain, I can't send anything to Earth. The signal has taken control of our entire communication system. We can only receive messages now, not send them." Jake looked at the screens showing the empty location in space where the signal came from. "Captain, I think we don't have a choice. Something is pulling us toward that place. Look at the navigation screens." Everyone turned to see that their ship was slowly changing course, moving toward the coordinates where the signal originated. The ship's engines weren't running, but they were moving anyway. "How is this possible?" Captain Rodriguez asked. Dr. Price checked his readings. "Some kind of invisible force is pulling us. We're being drawn to those coordinates whether we want to go or not. Jake felt another wave of images in his mind. This time he saw the crystal weapon more clearly. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, made of living crystal that seemed to pulse with its own light. In his vision he could hear a voice, speaking to him. The time of choosing has come. The ancient enemy stirs in the darkness between galaxies. You have been selected to bear the weapon of the first ones. Will you answer the call? Jake opened his eyes and looked at his crewmates. Something terrible is coming. This weapon was made to fight it, and somehow, I'm supposed to be the one to use it. Captain Rodriguez put her hand on Jake's shoulder. Whatever this is, Morrison, you won't face it alone. We're all in this together now. The ship continued moving toward the mysterious coordinates, pulled by forces beyond human understanding. Jake watched the stars change position outside the windows and wondered what they would find in that empty place in space. He also wondered if he would still be human when they found it. The message continued to repeat every 12 hours, and, with each repetition, Jake felt more connected to something vast and ancient. He was changing, but he didn't know if it was for better or worse. All he knew was that humanity's future might depend on what happened when they reached their destination. 3 days later, the UES Horizon dropped out of hyperspace near the coordinates. Jake stood on the bridge with Captain Rodriguez and the rest of the crew, staring at something that should not exist. In front of them floated a massive structure, in space, bigger than any city on Earth. It looked like a space station built by beings with technology far beyond human understanding. The station was dark except for a bright light at its center that hurt to look at directly. "My God," whispered Dr. Price. "That thing must be the size of a small moon. How long has it been here?" Rachel ran scans on the structure. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the center. Whatever is in there, it's still active after who knows how many years." Jake felt the strange connection in his mind grow stronger. The bright light at the center of the station called to him. "That's where the weapon is. I can feel it." "Captain." Rodriguez studied the readings. "The structure appears to be stable, but we're detecting some kind of breathable atmosphere inside. Morrison, are you sure about this?" "I have to go there, Captain. This weapon chose me for a reason. We need to find out why." Sam Carter, the ship's engineer, prepared a shuttle for the journey to the station. "I'm coming with you, Jake. This technology is beyond anything I've ever seen. We need to document everything." Dr. Amy Foster, the medical officer, joined them with her equipment. "I want to monitor Jake's condition. His brain scans have been showing strange changes since we received that first message." The shuttle docked, with the ancient station without any problems. The station's system seemed to recognize them and opened a path directly to the center. As they walked through corridors made of materials that looked like crystal and metal combined, lights turned on automatically to guide their way. The walls showed pictures of beings that were not human. Some looked like tall, thin people with large eyes. Others were completely different, with multiple arms or bodies made of energy instead of flesh. All of them carried weapons similar to the one calling to Jake. "Look at this," Sam said, studying the wall pictures. These beings were from different worlds, different species, but they all had the same weapon. As they got closer to the center, Jake heard a voice in his mind. It was not human, but it spoke in a way he could understand. The voice was calm and wise, like an old teacher. "Welcome, chosen one. I am the keeper of this place. I have waited long for one who could bear the weapon." They entered a huge round room at the center of the station. In the middle of the room, floating in a beam of light, was the weapon Jake had seen in his visions. It looked like a sword made of living crystal that changed colors as they watched. The crystal seemed to breathe with its own life. The voice spoke again, and this time, everyone could hear it. "I greet you, beings of Terra. Your chosen one has been prepared for this moment." Dr. Foster immediately started scanning Jake with her medical equipment. "Jake, your brain activity is off the charts. Something is definitely changing in your mind." A figure appeared in the room, made of light and energy instead of solid matter. It looked like one of the tall beings from the wall pictures, but see-through like a ghost. "I am the last custodian of the Vanguard, the first people to reach beyond the physical world. We created this weapon as our final gift to those who would come after us. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "What is this weapon for? Why did you choose Morrison?" The custodian's form shifted as it began to tell them a story that chilled their hearts. "Long ago, before your son was born, the first civilization in this galaxy achieved perfect knowledge. But with that knowledge came a terrible mistake. They created something that was meant to help them, but instead it became their destroyer. Images appeared in the air around them, showing the history of the galaxy. They saw civilizations rising and falling, and always, moving between the stars, was a dark presence that consumed everything in its path. We call it the Devourer. It feeds on the life force of thinking beings. It grows stronger with every world it destroys. We created this weapon to fight it, but we failed. We could only delay its hunger." Jake felt drawn to the weapon. Each step toward it made the connection in his mind stronger. Why me? Why was I chosen? The weapon learns from each bearer. It has been carried by warriors from hundreds of worlds. Each one taught it something new about courage and determination, but none of their species had what yours possesses. "What do we have that they didn't?" Dr. Price asked. The custodian seemed to smile, though its face was hard to see clearly. Chaos. Beautiful, creative chaos. Every other species that bore the weapon was united in thought and purpose. They fought with discipline and order, but the Devourer learned to defeat order. It cannot understand chaos. Sam studied his readings of the weapon. The energy patterns are incredible. This thing could power our entire civilization for 1,000 years. "It is not meant for power," the custodian warned. "It is meant to channel the will of an entire species into a force that can cut through the barriers between worlds. But there is a price." Dr. Foster looked worried. "What kind of price?" "Each time the weapon is used, the bearer loses part of their original self. They become more like the weapon and less like their own species. Every previous bearer eventually forgot who they were and became perfect warriors with no other thoughts." Jake reached out toward the weapon, and everyone could see the crystal responding to him. It pulsed brighter and began to sing with a sound like distant music. "The Devourer has awakened," the custodian said urgently. "Our sensors detect its movement in a distant galaxy. It has already consumed 17 worlds in the past year. It will find your people eventually." Captain Rodriguez grabbed Jake's arm. "Morrison, think about this. Are you willing to lose yourself to save humanity?" Jake looked at his friends and crewmates. "If I don't try, we'll all lose everything anyway. At least this way, there's a chance." He touched the weapon, and the moment his fingers made contact with the crystal, his mind exploded with memories that were not his own. He saw warriors from dozens of species, all brave, all determined, all gradually losing their humanity as they fought the Devourer across time and space. But he also felt something the other bearers had not. Through his connection to the weapon, he could sense every human in the galaxy, their fears, their hopes, their stubborn refusal to give up even when things seemed impossible. The weapon had never encountered a species like humanity before. "The weapon is changing," the custodian said with surprise in its voice. "It is learning from your species. This is unexpected." Jake lifted the weapon, and it felt perfectly balanced in his hands. But instead of feeling like he was losing himself, he felt more connected to humanity than ever before. "We need to get back to the ship," he said. "If the Devourer is coming, we need to warn everyone, and we need to figure out how to use this weapon to save our people." As they prepared to leave the ancient station, the custodian gave them one final warning. "The weapon will call to others of your kind. Some will want to study it, others will want to control it. You must be careful who you trust." Jake carried the weapon back to their shuttle, feeling its power flowing through him. He could sense the Devourer somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, hungry and searching. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. When the UES Horizon returned to Earth's solar system, they found chaos waiting for them. News of the alien weapon had somehow spread to every human colony, even though they had been unable to send any messages. Government officials, military, leaders, and scientists all demanded to meet with Jake and examine the weapon. Admiral Frank Thompson of the Colonial Defense Force was the first to board their ship. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many battles. "Morrison, I need you to hand over that weapon immediately. This is a matter of planetary security." Jake held the crystal weapon close to his side. Over the past week, it had become part of him in ways he didn't fully understand. "Admiral, with respect, I don't think that's a good idea. The weapon chose me. I'm not sure it will work for anyone else." "We need to study it," Admiral Thompson said firmly. "Our scientists need to understand how it works so we can make copies. If there's a threat coming, we need every advantage we can get." Dr. Amy Foster showed the Admiral her medical scans of Jake. "Sir, the weapon has been changing Jake's brain patterns. Each time he activates it, he loses some of his human memories and gains memories from previous bearers. If we're not careful, we could lose Jake completely." Captain Rodriguez stood beside Jake. "Admiral, we've seen what this weapon can do. It's not just a tool. It's alive in some way. I don't think we can just study it like a normal piece of technology." That afternoon, Jake was brought to a meeting with Earth's most powerful leaders. President Helen Adams sat at the head of a long table surrounded by generals, scientists, and business leaders. Jake felt uncomfortable under their staring eyes. "Mr. Morrison," President Adams said in a calm voice, "we appreciate what you've been through, but you must understand. This weapon could change the balance of power in the galaxy. We need to know everything about it." Karen Mills, a representative from the largest mining corporation in human space, leaned forward. "Think about what this could mean for trade. If we have technology like this, every alien species will want to negotiate with us. We could become the most powerful civilization in the galaxy." Jake felt the weapon pulse with energy at his side. It didn't like being discussed as a tool for power and profit. "Ma'am, this weapon wasn't made for trade or politics. It was made to fight something that wants to destroy all life in the galaxy." Dr. Nathan Price, who had come with them from the horizon, presented his findings to the group. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've detected disturbing signals from the outer colonies. Several systems have gone completely silent in the past month. Their last transmissions mentioned strange shadows moving between the stars." The room fell quiet as Dr. Price showed them recordings from the lost colonies. The messages were broken and filled with static, but the fear in the voices was clear. "This is Colony Ship New Boston. Something is wrong with space itself. The stars are going out one by one. We can see something moving in the darkness. Something huge. It's coming toward us. Oh God, it's here. The ship is shaking apart. Everyone is screaming. The darkness is inside the ship now. It's hungry. So hungry. Please, if anyone receives this message, warn Earth. Don't let it reach home. Don't let it..." The message ended in static. Jake felt the weapon's crystal grow warm against his hand. It recognized the enemy from the recording. Admiral Thompson stood up. "This confirms our worst fears. Morrison, we need that weapon now more than ever. Will you work with our military to prepare Earth's defenses?" Jake looked around the room at all the powerful people staring at him. "I'll help defend Earth and all human colonies, but I won't let you turn this weapon into something it's not meant to be." Over the next few days, Jake worked with Earth's military scientists to understand the weapon better. But each time he activated its power to demonstrate its abilities, he felt more of his human memories slipping away. Dr. Foster monitored him constantly. "Jake, you're losing yourself faster than we thought. Yesterday you forgot your sister's name. This morning you couldn't remember what Earth food tastes like. The weapon is overriding your human experiences with memories from alien warriors." Jake touched the crystal surface of the weapon and saw flashes of memories that weren't his own. He remembered fighting in battles on worlds he had never visited, using strategies from species he had never met. "Amy, I can feel them all. Every warrior who carried this weapon before me. They're still here in a way." "But what about you?" she asked. "What happens to Jake Morrison?" Before he could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the military base. Tony Garcia, a communications officer who had joined them from the horizon, ran into the room with a tablet full of urgent messages. "Jake, Captain Rodriguez, you need to see this. We're receiving reports from scouts at the edge of our solar system. Something big is coming. Multiple contacts moving faster than anything we've ever seen." The reports were terrifying. Scout ships described objects that seemed to absorb light, making the space around them darker. These objects moved in ways that defied physics, appearing and disappearing as if they could step in and out of normal space. Jake felt the weapon respond to the approaching threat. Its crystal surface began to glow brighter, and he could sense the Devourer's presence like a cold wind in his mind. "It's not the main force," he said, somehow knowing this without being told. "These are scouts. The Devourer is testing our defenses, trying to understand what kind of resistance we can offer." Captain Rodriguez looked at the reports. "How do you know that?" "The weapon remembers. It's fought these advanced forces before, on other worlds. They always come first to weaken the defenders and study their technology." Admiral Thompson burst into the room. "Morrison, we need you in space immediately. One of our outer defense stations has gone dark. We're sending a battle group to investigate, and we need that weapon with them." Jake stood up, feeling the weight of the crystal weapon at his side. "Admiral, I'll go, but I need you to understand something. This weapon works best when it's connected to the will of our entire species. It's not meant to be used by one person, alone." "What do you mean?" President Adams asked over the communication link. "The previous bearers failed because they fought as individuals even when they represented their entire species. But humans are different. We're not united like other species. We argue and disagree about everything. The weapon has never encountered that before." Dr. Price looked excited. "You think our diversity could be an advantage?" Jake nodded. "The weapon is learning from us. It's discovering that chaos and disagreement can be a source of strength, not weakness. But I need to find a way to connect it to more than just my own mind." As they prepared for the journey to the outer defense station, Jake felt the weapon's power growing stronger, but he also felt his human memories continuing to fade. Soon he might have the power to fight the Devourer, but would he still be human? Enough to remember why the fight mattered. The scout ships reported that the dark objects were moving closer to Earth. Time was running out, and Jake still didn't know how to use the weapon's full power without losing himself completely. The fate of humanity depended on finding that answer before the Devourer arrived in force. The outer defense station was gone. Where it should have been floating in space, there was only empty darkness that seemed to bend light around it. Jake stood on the bridge of the battleship UES Thunder, watching the impossible sight through the main viewing screen. "Sensors show nothing," reported Lieutenant Kate Johnson, the ship's engineer. "It's like that entire section of space has been erased." Captain Rodriguez, who had insisted on commanding this mission, studied the readings. "Jake, what does the weapon tell you about this?" Jake held the crystal weapon, feeling its power pulse through his hands. The memories of previous bearers flooded his mind, showing him similar scenes from other worlds. "This is what happens when the Devourer feeds. It doesn't just destroy matter. It consumes the space itself, leaving nothing behind." Admiral Thompson's voice came over the communication system from Earth. "Morrison, we're detecting more dark spots appearing throughout the outer colonies. Whatever these things are, they're spreading fast." Dr. Amy Foster scanned Jake again with her medical equipment. "Jake, your brain patterns are becoming more alien each day. We're running out of time before you lose your humanity completely." Jake knew she was right. Each time he used the weapon, more of his human memories disappeared. He could barely remember. His childhood on Earth and the faces of his family were becoming unclear. But in exchange, he was gaining knowledge and skills from warriors across the galaxy. "I have an idea," Jake said suddenly. The weapon was designed to channel the will of an entire species through one bearer. But what if we could connect it to many minds at once instead of just one? Dr. Nathan Price looked interested. "You mean create some kind of neural network?" "Exactly. The previous bearers all came from species that thought alike. They were united but predictable. Humans are different. We're chaotic, creative, and we disagree about everything. Maybe that's exactly what the weapon needs." Kate Johnson worked at her computer studying the weapon's energy patterns. "The crystal structure seems to be designed for multiple connections. I think I could modify our neural implants to interface with it." Captain Rodriguez looked worried. "Jake, that sounds incredibly dangerous. What if the people connected to The weapon lose their minds like you're losing your memories. It's a risk we have to take, Jake said. The Devourer's main force is coming. I can feel it getting closer. If I fight alone, I'll either lose my humanity completely or fail like all the previous bearers did. Within hours, volunteers began arriving from across human space. They came from every colony, every profession, every walk of life. Soldiers and scientists, but also teachers, farmers, artists, and engineers. They all understood that humanity's survival might depend on their willingness to link their minds with an alien weapon. Sarah Davis, a school teacher from Mars Colony, was one of the first volunteers. I have 3 children, she said to Jake. If this gives them a chance to live, then I'll take the risk. Mike Roberts, a farmer from one of the agricultural worlds, stepped forward next. I've spent my whole life growing food to feed people. If I can help grow a chance to beat this thing, count me in. Dr. Foster worked with Kate Johnson to modify the neural implants that many humans used for communication and data access. The AAO process is untested, she warned each volunteer. You might lose your individual consciousness permanently. You could become part of the weapon forever. Better that than letting the Devourer win, said Linda Chen, an artist who had traveled from Earth to volunteer. As the modifications were completed, Jake felt the weapon responding to the presence of so many potential connections. The crystal began to glow brighter, and new patterns appeared in its structure that had never been there before. The first connection was made with 10 volunteers. Jake felt their minds joining with his through the weapon, and instead of losing more of his humanity, he suddenly felt more human than ever. Through Sarah Davis, he remembered the joy of teaching children. Through Mike Roberts, he felt the satisfaction of growing food to feed others. Through Linda Chen, he experienced the creative drive to make something beautiful. This is incredible, Dr. Price said, monitoring the readings. The weapon's power output has increased by a factor of 10, but Jake's brain patterns are becoming more human, not less. But there was no time to celebrate. Alarms began ringing throughout the ship as sensors detected incoming objects. The Devourer's advance force had found them. The enemy ships appeared on the screens like moving shadows, darker than the space around them. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, appearing and disappearing as if they existed only partially in normal space. All ships prepare for battle, Captain Rodriguez ordered, but everyone knew that normal weapons would be useless against these creatures. Jake stepped forward, the weapon glowing in his hands, connected to 10 human minds. Let me try something. He raised the weapon, and for the first time since taking it from the ancient station, he felt its full power without losing his sense of self. The connected minds gave him strength, but more importantly, they gave him perspective. Each volunteer saw the problem differently, and together they found solutions that no single mind could have discovered. The weapon fired a beam of pure energy at the nearest shadow ship. But instead of a simple destructive blast, the energy carried with it human creativity and unpredictability. The shadow ship, which had easily absorbed conventional weapons, suddenly flickered and solidified. It couldn't understand or adapt to the chaotic patterns in the weapon's energy. It's working, Kate Johnson reported. The enemy ship is becoming visible to our sensors. It's solid now. The human fleet opened fire on the now solid enemy ship and destroyed it quickly. But more shadow ships were approaching, and Jake knew this was just the beginning. We need more connections, he said, more minds linked to the weapon. Over the next few hours, hundreds of volunteers joined the neural link. Each new connection brought different experiences, different ways of thinking, different solutions to the problem of fighting an enemy that existed beyond normal space. Through the growing network, Jake felt the collective will of humanity flowing through the weapon. Not the organized, disciplined will of previous species, but the chaotic, creative, stubborn will of a species that refused to give up no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The weapon transformed in his hands, becoming something new. It was no longer just a tool of war, but a channel for human ingenuity and determination. With each battle against the Devourer's scouts, the connected humans learned new ways to fight an enemy that fed on predictability. But Jake also sensed something else through the weapon. The main force of the Devourer was coming, drawn by the unique signature of human resistance. The real test was yet to come. "Captain," Jake said to Rodriguez, "we need to return to Earth. The entity that created all these shadow ships is coming, here personally. It wants to understand what makes us different from all the other species it has faced." As the human fleet prepared to return home, Jake felt the weight of thousands of connected minds. He was no longer just one person carrying an impossible burden. He was the voice of an entire species, chaotic and creative and determined to survive. The final battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The Devourer arrived at Earth 3 days later, and it was nothing like the shadow ships that had come before. It appeared as a massive darkness that stretched across space, bigger than planets, older than stars. Jake could feel its presence through, the weapon like a cold hand touching his soul. Standing on Earth's orbital defense platform, connected to over 10,000 human minds through the neural link, Jake watched as space itself seemed to bend around the ancient entity. The Devourer didn't exist fully in normal reality. It lived in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the life force of entire civilizations. "Jake," Captain Rodriguez said through the communication link, "our weapons can't even target it. How do we fight something that exists outside normal space?" Jake felt the weapon pulse in his hands, now permanently fused with his consciousness and the minds of thousands of volunteers. "We don't fight it in normal space, Captain. We go to where it really lives." Dr. Amy Foster monitored the neural link from the command center. "Jake, if you enter that dimension, you might not be able to come back. The weapon has never been used for something like this before." "The previous bearers tried to fight the Devourer in physical space," Jake replied, his voice carrying the wisdom of every warrior who had faced this enemy before. "They failed because they couldn't reach its true form. But we're different. We're connected in ways no other species has ever been." Through the neural link, Jake felt the support of every connected mind. Sarah Davis, the teacher from Mars, sent him memories of her students' laughter. Mike Roberts shared the feeling of soil in his hands and crops growing under alien suns. Linda Chen offered the creative spark that turned raw materials into art. "We're with you," Sarah's voice came through the link. "All of us." Jake stepped forward and activated the weapon's deepest power. Reality tore open around him like fabric, revealing the space between dimensions where the Devourer truly existed. He found himself in a realm where thought became reality and willpower shaped the fundamental forces of existence. The Devourer turned its attention to him, and Jake felt the full weight of its ancient hunger. It had consumed thousands of civilizations, absorbing their knowledge, their dreams, their very essence. It was impossibly old and impossibly alone. "Another bearer comes to face me," the Devourer spoke, its voice echoing through dimensions. "You are different from the others, small creature. Your mind burns with chaos where theirs held order, but you will fall as they all fell." The entity attacked, not with physical force but with pure despair. It showed Jake visions of every civilization it had destroyed, every hope it had crushed, every dream it had devoured. The attack was meant to break his will and make him surrender to the inevitable. But Jake was not alone. Through the neural link, 10,000 human minds shared the burden of the Devourer's despair. Teachers and farmers, soldiers and artists, scientists and children, all of them stood together against the darkness. "You're wrong," Jake said, raising the weapon. "We won't fall because we don't fight alone. Every other species you faced was united in purpose, predictable in their responses. You learned to defeat their order, but humans thrive in chaos." The weapon blazed with power, but instead of attacking, it offered something the Devourer had never experienced in its eons of existence. Through Jake and the connected minds, it felt what humanity had learned about loss and loneliness. "You were like us once," Jake said, understanding flooding through him as the weapon revealed the truth. "Your people achieved transcendence, became so advanced that they consumed their own reality. You're all that's left of them, aren't you? You've been alone for so long that you forgot what connection feels like." The Devourer recoiled, not from pain, but from a memory it had buried for millennia. "I am hunger. I am necessity. I consume to Prevent others from making the same mistakes my people made. But you're not preventing anything, Jake replied, the voices of 10,000 humans speaking through him. You're just spreading the same loneliness that destroyed your civilization. Let us show you another way. Instead of using the weapon to attack, Jake did something no previous bearer had attempted. He opened the neural link to include the Devourer itself, offering it a connection to the chaotic, creative, stubbornly hopeful consciousness of humanity. 4. The first time in eons, the ancient entity felt what it had forgotten. Through Sarah Davis, it experienced the joy of teaching and watching young minds grow. Through Mike Roberts, it felt the satisfaction of nurturing life instead of consuming it. Through Linda Chen, it discovered that creation could be more fulfilling than destruction. This is impossible, the Devourer said, its voice filled with wonder, instead of hunger. How do you maintain connections across such chaos? How do you find unity in so much disagreement? We don't find unity, Jake explained. We create it, moment by moment, choice by choice. We're connected not because we think alike, but because we choose to care about each other despite our differences. The entity's massive form began to change, the darkness that had consumed galaxies slowly transforming into something that resembled light. I had forgotten. My people, before we transcended, before we consumed everything, including ourselves. We were connected like this once. You don't have to be alone anymore, Jake offered. You don't have to consume civilizations to fill the emptiness. Let us share the burden of existence with you. The Devourer was silent for a long time, processing emotions it hadn't felt since before Earth's sun was born. Finally, it spoke again, and its voice was different, warmer. For eons, I have carried the memories of every civilization I consumed, but I carried them as trophies of conquest. You offer to carry them as honored memories of lives lived and dreams pursued. Yes, Jake said simply. The ancient entity made its choice. Instead of continuing its endless hunger, it chose to sleep, not in death but in hope. Through the neural link, it shared the preserved memories of every civilization it had consumed, giving them new life in human dreams and stories. The weapon, in Jake's hands, transformed one final time, no longer a tool of war but a bridge between species and dimensions. As the Devourer settled into its chosen rest, Jake felt its presence as a gentle touch rather than a consuming hunger. He returned to normal space to find the Earth's defenders staring in amazement. The massive darkness that had threatened their world was gone, replaced by a field of gentle light that seemed to sing with the voices of ancient civilizations. Jake, Captain Rodriguez said in wonder. What happened? We gave it what it had been missing, Jake replied, still connected to thousands of human minds but now fully himself again. Choice. Connection. The chance to be more than its hunger. Dr. Foster ran her scans and found that Jake's brain patterns had stabilized. Instead of losing his humanity to alien memories, he had gained something new. He carried within him the wisdom of civilizations that had seemed lost forever, preserved now in human consciousness. The weapon remained with Jake, but it was no longer a burden. It had become a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, their ability to find connection in chaos, to choose hope over despair, and to offer friendship even to their greatest enemies. Years later, when other young species reached out to the stars and faced their own challenges, they would find humanity waiting with open hands and the story of how chaos and creativity had triumphed over ancient hunger. Jake became their teacher, sharing the memories of 1,000 civilizations and the lesson that no one, no matter how old or powerful or lost, had to face existence alone. The Devourer slept peacefully in its dimension between worlds, no longer hungry but finally fed by the connections it had thought impossible, and in its dreams the voices of every civilization it had consumed lived on, not as victims but as teachers, showing new species how to choose connection over conquest, creation over consumption. Humanity had answered the summons of an ancient weapon and discovered that their greatest power was not in fighting alone, but in choosing to stand together, chaotic and creative and connected, against the darkness between the stars.